Hello, everyone, and welcome to A Balanced Life with Dr. Jacquie here at Black Star Network. I am always excited about when we are able to get together and talk about, of course, all things related to balanced living. Today will be no shortage of a very candid, open, and honest conversation related to how do we balance our emotions as it relates to money. I know it's a very difficult subject to talk about, but it's one that's needed. In these times where the winds of change just seem to be eating up every single cent that we have, we're going to be joined today by, of course, our usual suspects, my favorite guests, Pastor JT, Charlotte Avery, Dr. Tierney, and Corey Briscoe. And we're also joined today by America's Wealth Coach, Deborah Owens, who is also the host of Get Wealthy. Welcome in, everyone, to A Balanced Life. Hey, everyone.
Hey there, Dr. Jacquie.
Hello there. It's great to be here.
Hey, let me tell you, I am so excited about everybody being here in this conversation that we're going to have today. And I know I kept my introduction a little brief because I honestly believe that this is going to be a very power-packed hour in us discussing how we balance money, not just the checkbooks, but and the things that we buy. But there's some serious emotions attached to our dollars and cents. And oftentimes conversations that we have, decisions that we make are not always tethered to the right things. So I want to start with Corey Briscoe, because Corey, you are in that space of new husband and learning how to balance and, relate to your wife and have these various conversations, but you're also a business owner. Corey, can you talk to us for just a few moments about your emotions and money in being a newlywed?
Child, do we have enough time is the question. Oh my God. When I think of this is the conversation that I think it doesn't stress me out, but I learn more about myself every time we have a conversation. And I'm not a person that gets stressed by money conversations. But I am a person that gets stressed when I don't feel like there's a plan or there's an ability for us to map out to our goals. And so as a new couple and full transparency to our viewers, my wife is a partner in the firm and the chief creative officer. So she's one of the founders. And naturally, when you are starting a business, the business always goes before you. So I have said often, we got married, but we had a kid out of wedlock, which is the firm, because all of our investment, all of our time and money really has gone into that. And so financial planning and preparing ourselves has been an ordeal, but we have learned to not avoid things. My wife is very good about being head on and direct, specifically about things that she can't control. I'm a pretty direct person, but when I know I don't have a solution in play, I tend to we'll get to it. And with money planning, that's just not the case. You can't do it. It has to be a roadmap. It has to be stair step, and you have to have KPIs and goals, just like I do as a chief operating officer and one that leads financial operations for many organizations. You've got to have those conversations and you've got to have planning. So I have learned to give my wife really that permission to lead and step up and force that time and have those conversations, because at the end of the day, the more you put it aside, the more that you don't deal with it, the more it just comes and haunts you and bites you. And I think as a young couple in an evolving financial climate, we're talking about recession and inflation and so many other things. Some of the things that were automatic some years ago are now becoming, let's pause and think about that. How is that going to be relevant to our long-term sustainability? How are we creating a path of wealth versus richness? And how are we making sure that our investments now will be strategic, not only in the short term, but 5 years from now or when it's time for retirement? So that's how I'm addressing money, at least as a young entrepreneur. I'm taking it by the bulls, but I'm also realizing my strengths and weaknesses. And empowering myself to be vulnerable and have those tough conversations by allowing my significant other to really step up and lead in that case.
Thank you for sharing that information, because oftentimes young couples don't have that conversation related to money. Now, that is a conversation that is needed to be had before you get married, during your marriage, and any of those rocky places that are in between, because oftentimes, as Corey stated, there are lots of things related to money and how it can be controlled or not controlled. There's situations and circumstances that come up that are really outside of our scope of understanding sometimes. And, being in this pandemic has really, let me use this word, America was shook. Let's go with that, by this pandemic and the crisis that it caused related to how we manage our money and how we focus our lives, and being able to maintain a level of balance is often difficult. I want to ask this question of our special guest, Deborah Owens, because she brings to us this level of commitment and understanding and a dynamic related to seeing money in a way that I was raised that money is a tool. And I don't have an emotion literally attached to money. But Deborah, there are people sometimes who just don't have that view or use that lens. Can you talk to us a little bit about money as a tool as we dive a little bit deeper into how it can help us become balanced or unstable as a person?
Yeah, great question, Jackie. The truth is that it's more than money and wealth. And I love what Corey said, the difference between being rich and being wealthy. And so to that end, what I have begun to understand through all of the work that I've done, coaching thousands of people over the years, is that it is your mindset that drives so much of the decisions that you have around money. And so much of that mindset is based on whether you have an income or a wealth mindset, right? And so for so many of us, I know certainly my parents, what they wanted for me was to achieve financial success. And the sort of formula for financial success or goal, really, it was to make it to the middle class, right? That 6-figure income, that nice house. And certainly that was what my parents did. As their income increased, our standard of living went up. And what many people don't understand is, in order to manage your emotions and have a financial peace, if you will, and financial balance, you really have to make a shift from that income mindset to a wealth mindset. And what that really means is that you are no longer just thinking of earning more money and that's the answer to the problem. The real goal is to turn that income that you're earning into wealth, and that wealth is into assets. And as Corey stated, a business, real estate, investment portfolio, all kinds of assets. Once you transfer them, that becomes the asset that is now paying for your lifestyle, paying for your children's college education, as someone mentioned earlier. So I really do believe that, particularly for our community and people of color, that one of our major shifts that we have to make is understand that there is a difference between income and wealth, and manage our emotions around that.
Thank you for sharing, because managing your emotions oftentimes can lead us into trouble. Before we go to a break, I want to ask Charlotte Avery a question, because Charlotte, as a mom of 7, wife of 1, you are in that space of consistently watching your bottom line. Now, you've worked outside the home and inside the home, and our audience is very familiar with your story. When it comes to how you help your children understand how dollars are going to be used in your house, what are some of the tips that you can share with our audience related to this emotional attachment that kids often have with things and money and being able to do and not being able to do?
Well, one thing that I've loved hearing throughout our conversation so far is, excuse me, the income mindset versus the wealth mindset. And so I think that is a really great concept. And that is a mindset and a concept that we've tried to teach our children very early on. Even when it comes to, we started teaching our children about tithing really early. So, our children, I remember when our children used to ask us, especially my husband, like, Daddy, how much money do you make? And all these other things, and we were having like in-home conversations. And so we ended up teaching them about, the difference between being rich and being wealthy. We started teaching them the importance of tithing and saving and still being able to have money, for whatever your instant gratification might be, but knowing that your instant gratification is just it's temporal. And so we've started teaching our children those lessons really early. We've also, started, trying to teach them the difference between why you need something name brand versus not. Now, I mean, understanding my children are ages 8 to 18, and they look at the Nikes and they look at all of these name brands and things of that nature. But my husband, who I like to call Frugal Fred, he is not the name brand person. And so, we talk to our kids about these types of things. We talk about, why, I mean, in our children's rooms, they have jars in their rooms that's for their tithing, for their saving. And when we took our kids to get, when we got bank accounts for our children, we took them to the bank. Like, we walked them in, even at very young ages, so they would understand what it was to walk into a financial institution and see how we operated, as far as managing our money, but also how we were managing their money too, because our thing is not just, about the 6-figure salary and going to college and work and then working for someone else. We teach them, listen, you need to go to college to learn a skill or whatever, so that you can be like Corey and be like, other entrepreneurs, where you're now growing wealth and people are now working for you. And so we just try to keep everything in perspective at age level for them. But we really try to keep them, we really try to teach them very key principles. And we find those key principles right there in the Word.
I like that. And this is a perfect place for a break. When we come back after the break, I want to talk to Dr. Tierney and Pastor JT, simply because Charlotte mentioned something very interesting related to tithing. And I know, look, don't at me, don't hashtag me, don't text me, don't call me. What I'm about to say is real serious. We get into this space of guilt, especially when it comes to trying to make some determinations about how we tithe or not tithe. Is that an emotional issue or is it a spiritual issue? When we're back after the break.
Put 10 in here?
10, and you don't come out till you die. And you eat him, you eat 10.
Oh my God.
Welcome back, everyone, to A Balanced Life. I want to have a bit of a conversation with Pastor JT and Dr. Tierney, because as Charlotte Avery mentioned, tithing is something that we began teaching in most communities at a very young age, especially if you happen to be a person of faith. Now, in these pandemic times, the question comes up very often, just like people have these issues in trying to determine whether or not they should pay for their medicine or for their food, pay their light bill, or go out and have a good time. We are still having this age-old conversation and balancing our tithe or not. Pastor JT and Dr. Tierney, let's have a conversation. We're in that space right now where people are a little light on resources, but it doesn't change the responsibility of deciding what to give, when to give, and how to give. And I want to start with Dr. Tierney first, because in your life as a level up coach, I know you sometimes talk to people about how to level up and how to level down, how to have these parallel lives that they need to live in order to stay in balance. How do you guide people, if you will, as it relates to not feeling guilty about doing some of the things that are very necessary that keep us going?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So when we talk about this tithing thing, I have to just out the gate. When I got my first job, and it was like a summer job for like the city, I was 13. My mom immediately, when I got my first check, she was like, okay, here's how you tithe. 10%, not 10% off of what goes in your pocket, but 10% off of what you were paid, because you need to pay your tithe before you pay the government, before you pay anything, And that was like my first money lesson was on, on tithing. And I can say it's definitely one of those things that when I lost my job in 2016 and was able to live for about 2 years off of my savings. And, when I had 2 quarters to rub together, I know it was from me leaning into that tithing piece, and really leaning into that my spiritual lens with my finances. But I always tell people that our God is a God of grace, and so if I can't tithe this time because I have to choose between my food or my medicine or, so the only thing I can give is $5 or, he sees that. It says that our Lord loves a cheerful giver, so if you can't give that 10% of your tithe, and you're falling short in that, don't beat yourself up. Don't feel guilty. Don't, sit with your notebook and your calculator and you're trying to, don't do that to yourself, because you're adding more stress than what really even needs to be, and from remembering that, again, our God is a God of grace. So keep that at the forefront as we're moving, through life and with the ups and the downs and the financial ups and downs. Remember that grace piece. So give yourself some grace in that. So that's the first thing.
The first thing, give yourself grace. Now I know Pastor JT is going to come from a different lens, because as a pastor, he's not going to have a conversation about not giving the tithe. And I'm just putting that out there for everybody who's like, what is he going to say? But that is something to consider, that there's faith, there's grace, and there's giving. And where does that faith over fear in giving, even when you don't have, step in? Pastor JT.
That's a very hot topic nowadays. And I believe that there are a lot of teachings that we have grown accustomed to, especially in our religious circles, that are under fire as of late. But I believe in giving. I believe in tithing. But I will also take it a step further without not necessarily getting too deep from a theological standpoint. The tithe was actually based on a legalistic way of giving. That's why if you look in the text in Malachi, it talked about robbing God and there was a curse attached to it. But then how could we lift the curse? Going back to releasing the tithe. But then as we move over into the New Testament, it never was a text that said stop tithing, but Paul stretched the minds of the believer to start talking about now, purpose in your heart before you get here, what you're going to give, because God loves a cheerful giver. And then he continued on to say that the measure in which you give is the way that you will receive. So if you are a bountiful giver, you will receive bountifully. But if you kind of give and you have a little stinginess, then that's how you're going to receive your blessings back to you. But now I will take it a step further and maybe stretch the minds of our listeners, because I'm a very practical preacher. I try to make the text come alive so you can take it home with you Monday through Saturday, because that's where the true rubber meets the road. I believe that it all comes down to discipline. Mm-hmm. If we really look at it, if we talk about a wealth mindset, no wealthy person operates without a budget. Mm-hmm. And you are sitting down at a table and you have a pencil or pen in your hand, or if you're fancy and you got an Excel spreadsheet, I think that it is a travesty if you have had line items to include everyone else, but there is no line item that includes God. Mm-hmm. I believe that he has to be at the top. Even some people who don't have the religious background and they may not categorize it as a tithe, it's now repurposed as their charitable giving. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, the key to the wealth success that we all believe that we can attain, it is releasing out of your hand more and then expecting more to come back to you. But now from a religious standpoint, we do believe that it starts with the tithe. I believe that 10%
it now puts us in a position. And I always say this at the Word Church. I said that giving is a celebratory time because as a young pastor, never to be in a position where I had to twist your arm. I had to come up with, tricky ways to get you to give. I never wanted that responsibility. I didn't want to be the walking epitome of a BET commercial at 3:00 in the morning to try to force you to give to an initiative in Africa. I wanted you to see that you actually, by giving, position yourself to be in a kingdom exchange, that when you give to God, He's able to give back to you. Mm-hmm. And so if you are able to see it from that lens, from that vantage point, you're making a weekly investment that you don't even have to worry about if the stock market is going to go down, because I'm just a firm believer that there's never, ever going to be a recession in heaven.
Absolutely. That's a really good statement. Corey and Deborah Owens, I want to invite them into this conversation because as you mentioned the term recession, and let me tell you, people are trying not to use that R word. You know what I'm saying? We are in that space where this conversation and talk about going back to 1970s living, what are we going to be eating? How are we going to be shopping? Are we living in a life of excess? As it relates to corporate responsibility, I was taught you live on the 80%. You give 10 to the church, you save 10% for yourself, and you live on the 80. When it comes down to corporate responsibility and what employers do to help their people manage money wisely, Deborah, what are some levels of engagement or investment that conversations that people need to have with their, supervisors or superior officers?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. Interestingly enough, I just came from training at an airport where they provide their employees with financial wellness training. And, what I would say for employers that, acknowledging that these are challenging times for many people, specifically if we look at, people are talking recession, but a lot of that has to do with the fact that we have inflation. And what that inflation means in real terms, and we all see it, we go to the pump and, 2 months ago, we could fill up a tank for 50, now it's at 70. And that's real for many people. And so I do feel like when we hear the word recession, what we need to understand that so much of the stress that people are experiencing is really just around the cost of everything going up. You can relate to not only the gas pump, but I don't know about you, but I went in the grocery store and chicken wings were kind of outrageous in terms of the pricing. So I think there are a couple of things like, I think of my own parents and their ability to adapt to the economic situation, certainly not earning near what many of us today are earning. And I feel like that employers can provide not only their employees with access to knowledge of how to manage, how to be more fiscally responsible in these challenging times, but also, quite frankly, Jackie, I think that for individual responsibilities, what is required is for you to know that life is a series of trade-offs and that the economy goes up and down. And so we have to adjust our behavior to that. Yes, recession, recession means that we're not growing for 2 quarters. So that's the technical aspect of the recession. But I do feel like there's so much turbulence going on. If you were to look at your 401k, you would see that this year has been tough on the financial markets. And so you're seeing a decline in the value of your savings. And so there's a real tendency for people to get fearful, to get emotional around it. But I want to challenge folks these are the times through which you learn how to do more with less, and also kind of counterintuitive if you are investing, you need to continue to do so, because now, especially through your 401k or employer-sponsored retirement plan, you almost have a forced way of buying investments at lower prices than they were just 6 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
It makes a lot of sense. Corey Briscoe, you stated earlier that you serve as Chief Operations Officer and oftentimes CFO for other companies. How are you guiding and helping them manage events and the things that they want to do with limited dollars that they've been able to receive during this pandemic season? What does that look like? And how do you help young companies and some mature companies who are trying to figure out how to navigate these waters really be in a safe space with their money and make it make sense?
I tell people when they allow me to lead financial operations that I am very unconventional. And I believe at the base of every good company is a strong corporate social responsibility plan. And what that says to our viewers is at the well-being of our community, our society as a whole, that's our commitment. That's what CSR is. And I have always believed, and I see this in the life of ABCD and Company, is that when our community is whole, when we are responsible and make sure that society, even our employees, are whole, the firm is whole, the agency is whole. And so we have to pivot as a nation to believe that every time, inflation comes in recession, as Deborah said, is something where we just stop. It's actually, if you look at the wealthy, that's when oftentimes they look at where are they investing, how are they investing, and what does that mean? When we look at the labor market right now, and we look at what's going on, currently in the country, unemployment has been steady at 3.6, for 4 months in a row. When we look at some of these signs and things that are happening in our economy, and we're certainly, the Federal Reserve is trying to curb inflation and do things. And we know inflation is the highest it's ever been in 4 decades. But we have a responsibility to those who are underserved and those who often don't have chances to get in the economy, to tell them to make moves when things are low, when the stocks are pouring down, and there is an ability to get in and to make record profit, because what goes down must come up. And when we look at things like that, I'm encouraging my businesses and my firms to look at your storehouse and be wise. Be wise, making sure that you have a cushion. Be wise about how you're spending. But also be wise is at the end of the day, you are trying to make strategic investments that will yield long-term. This is not a short-term game. This is not something, even in your personal finances, you should be looking at, because at the end of the day, it will pivot, it will shift, and we want to be able to come out on the other side of this even better than we did going in.
Let me just say, coming out on the other side is not going to be easy. When we come back after the break, I want to have a conversation with Charlotte Avery, our mom strategist, and Deborah Owens. Oftentimes, our children can not only break our emotions, but they can also break your budget. When we're back after the break.
Pull up a chair, take your seat at the Black Table with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Welcome back, everyone, to A Balanced Life. We have heard a wealth of information related to how we manage our emotions, how we manage our money, and how do we literally set ourselves apart and being able to thrive in the downtimes. I want to talk to Charlotte Avery now, who is our mom strategist, to give us some tips about how do we help our children understand not only just the value of money, but also recognizing that they are just a small portion. Well, not your kids are a small portion, but their needs, wants, and desires are just a small portion of the budget as a whole. Charlotte Avery, welcome.
Well, you kind of just, in your introduction, you actually just took the words out of my mouth, because, one thing that we teach our children is the difference between needs and wants. And we also teach them, about priorities. And so with our family, that's a space that we deal in with our children. One thing that I think that, the pandemic taught us, and I think it actually prepared us for where we are now in our economy, because, when the pandemic happened, there were a lot of things that we were no longer doing. There was money that we were no longer spending. Like for me, there were activities and extracurricular activities that I was no longer paying for. So, we were able to now take that money and save it, which now is also preparing us not only for our son to go to college, but it's also now preparing us in this place of recession, inflation, or what have you, because now there are things that we let go of back in the pandemic that we have chosen not to go back to. And so, sometimes our children will ask, well, when can I go back to dance, or when can I go back to doing these things? And, now I look at the value. I look so much more at the value of our time. And I also, have become an expert in saying no to my children, because, children, like you said, will break you financially if you let them. And so I'm a firm believer that when you are a parent who does not dumb down your children, but you have constructive and very clear, concise conversations with your children about the money, about the financial state of your family in your household, not because you're trying to make them feel bad, so that they can actually understand where we all are, because it impacts all of us. It impacts, in my household, it impacts all 9 of us. So, for me to say yes to something means that we're saying no to something else. And, I heard somebody saying, recently, that saying no is important because saying yes is expensive. And so I've taken that and kind of held it close to my heart, because even when it comes to spending money with our children and things like that, I always say to myself, Charlotte, you've got to count the cost. And even with our children, when they're asking to spend money or for us to go somewhere or do something, I'm always saying to them, well, you guys, we need to count the cost. What are we going to be saying yes to and sacrificing that, you might see is important down the road? And so I just believe that it's so important to have very clear, concise, constructive conversations, because communication is everything. And sometimes as adults, we think, oh, we shouldn't talk to our children about these types of things when it comes to money or whatever. But how are they going to know if we don't teach them? We are their first teachers. And so, I really do my best, and my husband does his best, to really have clear, concise, constructive conversations that are very intentional about money in the state of our union, which is the A-team.
Exactly. Now, Deborah, when you think about money and how children see it, how children use it, what are some of the tips that you're giving to parents related to allowance and how it should be spent, and should some of it be saved? Because oftentimes financial literacy goes undiscussed in a lot of our homes.
It does. And what I would, really want parents to understand is you can't value what you don't earn. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I really want you to get that. Like for children, I think the best thing you can do is to give them a sense of ownership and a sense of waiting to achieve a certain goal. Yes. And so that they are able to delay, gratification, right? Because I love what you mentioned about saying no because yes is expensive, but I would also say that saying no now is saying yes to the future. And
absolutely.
So put that in. One of the things I did with my children is if they got an allowance and they earned something, half of it they could spend, but the other half had to be saved, right? Mm-hmm. And then as they got their jobs, the same thing, they would save a portion and a portion went into their investments. And when they went to college, they were able to use those funds for those expenses, for their expenses, additional expenses. And it really gave them a sense of power and control. Mm-hmm. So the advice that I would give any parent is to give a source, create a source that your children can take ownership of, and also learn how to budget and save toward longer term goals, because that's really the key. As you grow older, the ability to manage your resources effectively, people sometimes get concerned about having a budget. Well, having a budget really is having freedom, because you have some control over where your resources are going to be deployed.
I agree.
Oh, wow. So
I agree.
Because I'm listening to both of you talk, and these are like the best case scenarios. So I'm asking this for our audience. Okay. Literally, I'm asking this for our audience. So what happens when you give allowance and children are doing their chores? Is that money really their money? Or do you still police how that money is used, because you're also teaching them stewardship? And I'm asking that for all the parents out there saying, I'm about to pull my allowance because little Jimmy's not taking out the trash, or he used my money to do A, B, C, and D, and we don't believe in A, B, C, and D. So, when do we start to pull back as a teachable moment, but not as punishment when it comes to money? And that sometimes can throw off balance in the home because of emotions, and everybody's in their feelings now. How do we deal with all these things associated with the give and take of resources? Either one of y'all can jump in. I don't have children.
So,
you're an auntie. I do know that, right? I do know that. Well, here's all I'm going to say is that, it's sort of like couples have asked me, well, should it be her, if we get married, should it be her money or my money? Should we have separate accounts? And the key to any type of, what do I want to call, agreement around money is that you both agree, right? And I think that is true for children too. Some parents don't, like doing the chores. That's not why you're getting an allowance. Like, you doing the chores because you live here, and that's the cost of living in my home, right? That's fine. Communicate that, and let's have that be the rules of operation. And I think that, the best advice I could give any of the parents in our or audience around helping children become fiscally responsibility is to give them a framework so that they can be successful, make what the rules of engagement are, and then hold them accountable. If you're going to say your chores are tied to that, getting that allowance, and they don't do them, hold them accountable, right? If the chores are something you have to do, and by the way, here's how you can earn some extra money, hold them accountable. I think for so many adults who are sort of challenged around managing money because there were no rules.
There were no rules. Charlotte Avery.
So I want to touch on one thing that you said, Dr. Jacquie, about like how changing things can interrupt households. So I remember, telling my children when they were talking to me and my husband about allowances. And so I said to them, I said, well, everybody in our house has chores. I said, but I'm not going to pay you to do something that is your reasonable service. And so they were like, and I was like, that's what I'm talking about. I'm not going to pay you to do something that's your reasonable service because you live here. But what we do is, like, say, for instance, and my daughter just did this the other day. She is into this like bathroom cleaning thing. And so she said, well, Mom, can I clean you and Daddy's bathroom? And she said, I just want to do it to decompress. Like, who does that, right? But I was like, okay, fine. So she cleaned our bathroom, but she didn't know that we were going to pay her for cleaning our bathroom. But, the fact that she did it and it was outside of something that was her reasonable service, because it's not her reasonable service to clean our bathroom. But you know what? I wanted to show her, hey, you know what? I appreciate you and I honor you for wanting to do this. And so, when we are talking about money with our children, one thing that Deborah said is we do ask them, hey, what are you working towards? Because, our children, they want things like, whether it's a pair of Jordans or whatever. I'm like, I'm not paying you money. Yeah, I'm not going to give you money for, I'm not going to just go out and buy you Jordans, but you can work towards your Jordans since you want them so badly, or you can work towards your iPad. And so they get to see, as they're getting allowances or they're getting birthday money or whatever, they get to now take responsibility for building up the money that's going to actually go to purchase the thing that they wanted. And not only do they get to do that, but it also teaches them to value what it is that they want. Because, you know, as parents, we'll just be like, oh yeah, I'm going to buy this for you. But we also need to teach our children what it means to be able to save money, to budget for it, and then for them to be able to count the cost to say, you know what, now that I saved all this money, do I really want to go and buy this? Or do I just want to go ahead and put it in the bank? And we give our children the autonomy to decide, you know, after they've tithed and saved and all of that, we give them the autonomy to decide, okay, do you really want to go and buy this? Or do you want to just use it for something else and put your money in the bank? Some of our children, they say, you know what, I saved for this, I'm going to go and buy it. Our other children, some of them are like, I'm just going to go ahead and put this in the bank and save it for something later. And so I think it's just really important that all of the principles that we're talking about, that we really, really as a community teach our children these values and principles that we're all sharing here today.
Thank you both for sharing that information. Before we go to our break, I want to bring everyone else back in, because as you guys were talking, I just remember those times when, you know, so Deborah mentioned I'm an auntie. I'm the spoiler auntie. It's what I am. You know, it's who I am. It's what I do. But, you know, I often remember those times where when I would say, hey, yeah, you guys can go and get this, but they only wanted it if it was my money. They didn't want to spend their money. So I'm going to ask you guys a question. What's the one thing that you would want if someone else was buying it and it didn't come out of your budget? Think about that for a moment. What is it that you, like, you're saving your money, you have other goals and things you want with your money, but if there was something that you could have that someone else was paying for that didn't have to come out of your budget, what would that be? Dr. Tierney.
And you would start with me first. I don't know. That's a really hard question for me, because it's one of the things, it's funny you ask me first, because it's one of those things where I'm really content. You know, there's nothing that I'm walking around like, oh, I wish I had that, or, oh, you know, if someone was to buy something for me. My husband does it all the time. We were in the store. You want anything? No. You know, we were actually in the jewelry store one day and he was like, you see anything you want? And I was like, no, not a new string of pearls. No. And the lady behind the jewelry counter was like, you need to keep her. She's a keeper. She's in this store, you know, and truly, like, it's one of those things where my emotions are not tied to things and wanting more and more stuff. So that's truly a question where if someone were to ask me that, I would seriously have to think like long and hard about something that I wanted, because I truly have a lot of the things that I didn't see manifesting in my life, and a lot of the things that I didn't even know I wanted, and God was like, there you go, you know. So I truly live content right now. And I know that's not the answer you're looking for, but that's what it is for me.
You know, it's your answer, and I respect that. And I think that as people are watching and listening, sometimes we have to do a self-assessment and say, am I at a space of contentment? And sometimes it's about contentment, but it's also about age. You know, some of us are at that age.
Well, I have a long list, honey.
All right. You can't tell us what's on your list.
Where do I start? First, pay for me some massages. I need a couple of facials. As a matter of fact, just send me away to Sedona, Arizona to a resort for a couple of days and give me carte blanche on whatever service I want, and I'm good.
All right, Pastor JT.
Okay, so since this show has a global reach, I am in Houston, Texas, and I want someone to buy me Greenspoint Mall. I already have the plan. I'm going to repurpose it. We are going to invest it, and we are going to give back to our community. So if you are on, please get with Dr. Jacquie. She's going to get with me, and we're going to make that happen.
I love it.
I have to tell you, that is, I've seen Greenspoint Mall. For those of you who are in the DMV, he's asking pretty much for either Dulles Town Center or Fair Oaks Mall.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Oh yeah, he's got big plans. And I have to admit, you have to dream big and ask big, because if the plan is big enough for you to do it, you're really not asking big enough.
That's right.
Corey Briscoe.
So yeah, I'm not Dr. Tierney either today. If somebody asks me, I think there are two things I've learned. In business, the first thing I learned was you always try to use someone else's money. So I would ask for real estate. I'd love, again, this global audience can gift me for my birthday real estate anywhere, anyhow. I think real estate's always a wonderful asset to have. But I think as a business owner, one of the things that I have learned, I tell people all the time, like people buy me gifts and they're wonderful. But I need time. So when I say buy me time, buy me services, right? You know, I'm always so busy. Laundry service, you know, meal prep services. As a business owner, that's the stuff that makes my life better.
Okay, wait, can I change my answer now?
No,
Can I change?
No, but let me just say, I'm taking a page out of Corey's book. And Dr. Deborah's book. I'm gonna call you Dr. Deborah, because let me tell you something. I want all of those things, but let me tell you, I'm just gonna keep it totally real. I want a car that only fits me and one of my other friends, that nobody can eat or drink in and bring crumbs and fruit snacks and all of the foolishness, no sports gear. I just that's what I want. Okay. So anybody who's listening, I and it has to be fabulous, because you know that's how I get down. But that's what I want, because I just don't want to take these people with me. Okay.
You know, guys, I think that this is a really good exercise, as we're being open, honest, and transparent, for our audience to really be able to see that even though we come from a variety of backgrounds, all of our financial incomes are different, we still value the ability to laugh and to take things, you know, in stride, to discover that it's okay to ask people for help and not feel as if, you know, oh, this is, you know, we get into that whole humdrum, spirit down type thing. And a part of being able to live a balanced life as it relates to money is being able to laugh and to joke and to dream big. But then also times just to kind of sit back and reflect and say, you know, I'm kind of good with where I'm at. And I have to tell you, Dr. Tierney, I'm in that space at my age where I'm pretty okay with where I'm at. I have had a lifetime of people in my life space. And sometimes I just want to sit in my house and be cool with me, you know? And so it's just one of those things where you get to that space. We're going to come back after the break. I'm going to ask our guests to give us some tips that our audience can take with them on this journey of learning how to live your best life in balance with what you have. Not what you want, not what you need, but sometimes we have to learn to get comfortable with where we're at in order to find our next launching point when we're back after the break.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Welcome back, everyone, to A Balanced Life. And I'm so delighted that you guys have joined us today. We are talking all things money, things related to wealth, how we're handling our money, how it's managing us or how we're managing it, how we're dealing with it from an emotional perspective, but also how we're teaching our kids to value every dollar and cent. I want our guests to share with us a few takeaways from their own lives, regrets, or great things that they have learned about money that will help you along your journey. Welcome back, everyone. I'm going to start with Corey Briscoe. Corey, what are some things that you've learned about money that are helping you that you would like to share with the audience that they can put in their balanced living dollars and cents toolkit?
Sure. I think this is an easy one for me. I've been an entrepreneur now for 9 years. And the biggest mistake that I made as an entrepreneur is I did not pay myself first. I prioritized the firm. I prioritized people. I prioritized growing the firm. And it was a beautiful thing. It was a beautiful thing. Our company has expanded drastically. We're doing great things. But what I did not do was I didn't put Corey first. And that has bit me in the butt along the way. So I have learned, no matter what, right? It's like when you get on an airplane, they tell you to put the oxygen mask on you first before you help someone else. So I'm learning that in my own life.
Absolutely. Pastor JT.
Wow. One of the things, and I really love what Corey said. So I think one of the other things that I did is I married up. I married a wife that was so keen and so in tune with God that even as a pastor, she challenged our giving. And one day she challenged me. She said, let's start giving to where we want to live. Let's start giving to where we want to live. So that exceeded the tithe. It challenged us, but it has developed a muscle memory in us that we actually live on the 60. Because now what has happened is we have reduced our ceiling, which gives us an opportunity to invest more, to save more, and to live more. So if I can actually leave one tidbit for our listeners, start now. And I know a lot of times, even when it relates to giving, a lot of people say, if I become a millionaire, I'm going to start giving, or I'm going to do this or do that. But it's easier for you to give a tenth or to save or to invest off of 1,000 than it is 1,000,000. Trust me. Start now. And if you don't know where to start, there are amazing people like Deborah Owens, financial coaches that can help you. But I would say start now, because if we don't know where we're going, chances are you may miss the exit that you need to.
Dr. Tierney.
So the thing I would say is to check your emotions. When we find ourselves in these emotional states, it could be insecurity, where because we're feeling insecure, then we now have to buy the name brand shoes or the latest purse or whatever it is in order to feel more secure about ourselves. That's going to run us into a hole. It could be even on the other end of the spectrum, where I made the same mistake that Corey did in building my business. I didn't pay, myself. And that was from an emotional place that I have to grind it out and, putting myself last. It was that emotion that was driving that. Is it a poverty mindset? Do you have this emotion of lack and there's never going to be, enough? Or do you have this feeling that you're always needing more this, more that, more, So you have to check your emotions. And I love what you said, Dr. Jacquie, about being in that space of being able to see what the next move is. And sometimes that means we have to look around and see, okay, what do I have? I have everything, that I need. So let me just kind of check my emotions and be content where I am so that I can clearly see what the next financial move is. And I'm making that decision from a logical mindset and not from an emotional, place.
Charlotte Avery.
For me, I would say really manage and I think it goes along with what Dr. Tierney said, but really check your instant gratification mindset. Because, for me, and you were asking about, like, one thing that you asked about was regrets. One thing that I regret, especially, before I was married and had children, is I regret the amount of money that I spent in my singleness when I should have actually been saving. And I regret not using and maximizing the financial tools that were provided to me by my work institutions and things like that, like maxing out my 401k and things of that nature. And so, there's always going to be a sale, right? And so my thing is, sometimes when I go out shopping and I see things or whatever, I do my best to just not buy it. And then I wait like 24 hours and to ask myself, do I really want to go and get that? Do I really need that? And what is the why behind that? And then it helps me to manage how I'm spending, and it helps me to manage my emotions about it.
Deborah.
Wow, I love that, because, it's a segue. And one of the things that I've learned really is that needing nothing attracts everything. And so
That's
to
good.
that end, what I want to say to the audience is you have everything you need to be everything you need to be. And, chasing dollars and thinking more money is going to solve your problems. I mean, Biggie Smalls was right. More money, more problems.
Mm-hmm.
And so the focus on the pursuit of more actually leaves you in bondage.
Mm-hmm.
And the true freedom is being able to manage what you already have.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And not until you're able to manage what you already have effectively will having more really allow you to do things purposely and more impactfully.
Yes.
Yes.
So, the tip that I would give is to really first decide where do you want to be? What are you willing to do to give up today? Those things, those sales, everything that we've mentioned here, just about things that so often we're purchasing, not out of a real desire or need for them, but really from the space of lack and that poverty mindset, thinking that things are going to, it's almost like the way the whole economy is set up really is to play with our emotions, whether
Mhm.
it's the Amazon app or the shopping app. There's buy one more, go to the dinner. Well, don't you want to add this with that? And, so true wealth is the ability to fully experience life on your own terms and have the time to do it. So I totally agree with Corey on that.
So let me ask you a follow-up question as Deborah, as we get ready to wrap up our show. Oftentimes people don't know where to go to get help or what type of vehicle to use to manage their money. What are some avenues out there today if people have a bank and they're not going to cash their check? Who should they talk to at the bank about being able to get involved in vehicles that can help them with their wealth mindset?
Well, what I'm so excited about is the amount of tools, reputable tools that are on the internet that allow people to get smarter about money. One of my favorite websites is called nerdwallet.com. And on NerdWallet, it's going to give you access to all kinds of tools and resources, and you're able to pretty much get an answer to any question that you want. Another tool, particularly for those of you who want to learn more about how the financial markets work, one of my favorite tools or website is finance.yahoo.com. So Yahoo, but just put finance on the front of it. And so I mentioned NerdWallet. And of course, I cannot leave wealthyu.com out. Check us out. We have a free Facebook group where we're talking, giving free resources, workshops, and seminars. The key is to get started. And really, for most people, one of the easiest way to get started is to take full advantages of the resources that your employer might offer, because typically it's not just retirement accounts. There are access to all kinds of savings, additional investment plans, benefits that you can take advantage of it. And many of them have financial wellness programs as well.
Outstanding. When we come back after the break, I'll give my reflections.
We're all impacted by the culture, whether we know it or not. From politics to music and entertainment, it's a huge part of our lives, and we're going to talk about it every day right here on The Culture with me, Faraji Muhammad, only on the Black Star Network.
Welcome back, everyone, to A Balanced Life with Dr. Jacquie. As you can tell, we are here on this show to help you manage all areas and aspects of your life. I know money is a very difficult subject to talk about. Sometimes you have a little and sometimes you have a lot, but being able to make decisions about what to do with it often gets us in a space where we are literally about to lose our mind. So I hope that today someone has said something that will allow you to really discover how to use money as a tool and to use it for your advantage. Whether you say yes, whether you say no, whether you decide to make investments, put it in a bank, or use some of the other tools and resources that our guests have spoken of today. The key is literally for you to be able to fall in love again with what it means to live your best life on your terms with the resources that have been made available to you. Thank you for watching. Bye now.